My name is Peggy Dubeck. I'm a researcher at RTI International, interested in the role that the language of instruction has to support learning. I'm one of the authors of this guide on practical language choices. In it, we recommend a four-step process. Step one is knowing the language context and related politics. Learning about language is done through language mapping, reviewing data on language use, and gathering related beliefs. The politics of language need to be understood as well, including understanding if the proposed language aligns with national identity, political direction, and resource allocation. Step two is building consensus. Use the understanding of the language context to engage with stakeholders at the national and local levels. Where there's resistance, it's helpful to remember that stakeholders usually have a logical reason for it. Step three, design the program, begins with selecting a model. This table defines models such as bilingual, multilingual, and addresses decisions such as the quantity of subjects taught in the local language and the transition to an additional language. The number and type of local languages is first. Ideally, some local languages have already been approved. If so, start with those. Languages are sensitive topics, and if you can avoid controversy, the more efficient you'll be. If languages haven't been identified, or if there is interest in changing them, consult the Global Proficiency Framework for its literacy and numeracy goals for grades 1 to 9. Use languages that are used by more of the population so it reaches more students. And use a language that has a wider geographical spread so that more jurisdictions are engaged. Consider the utility of the potential language for students. It makes sense, and it's their right for students to learn to read and write well in the language that they use in everyday situations. Start with languages that have a settled orthography, as this will also ease a complicated process. After you have the materials and teachers trained in that language, then proceed to the languages with an unsettled orthography. This figure shows a classroom where the children come from 3 language backgrounds. 15 children each speak language A, B, or C. If language A was the language of instruction, it would equal 16 people, 15 students, and 1 teacher who know the language of instruction. The 15 language A students could be language models for the 30 students who don't. If you're in a similar situation, avoid the international language as the default solution for reasons shown on the right. In this situation, the international language, language D, is only spoken by the teacher. So this means there would only be 1 language model for 45 students. The case is that 16 language role models is better than 1 language role model. We also offer suggestions on selecting a transition model, such as use a model that helps to reach the goals of grades 2 and grade 5. These are key years. This table shows pedagogical implications of the models. A common language transition model switches from L1 to L2 early, typically grade 3 or grade 4. Or another common model is to transition late, usually between grade 5 and grade 8. As can be expected, all 4 presented models have benefits and challenges. Some benefits, such as learning gains, might be expected, while others might surprise you. I encourage you to use this table when the discussion turns to what model is best for your context. Step 3 has other design decisions. The teaching and learning materials need to be high quality, or the model you've selected might be considered a failure. It is for this reason we recommend doing just 2 languages at a time. Some stakeholders will be rightly curious about the instructional methods. You can be guided by the instructional methods called for in structure pedagogy, which is a coordinated, combined approach using lesson plans, student materials, teacher training, and ongoing support is relevant for the languages you'll be using. Although structure pedagogy is relevant, there are pedagogical implications specific to each language. For example, the consistency between sounds and symbols that represent them influence the time it takes to become an independent reader. Another implication is the visual features. For example, an alphabet that has 200 symbols will take longer to learn than an alphabet that has just 30. Also implicating is the visual form. The length of the word between the white space on a page has implications on decisions such as sentence length and particular grades. For success, teachers need support. Even if there are teachers who regularly use the local language, it's likely that their strongest teaching skills are in another language, possibly an international one. Therefore, if they're to switch to teaching in the local language, they need to learn about teaching in that language too. To help, consider having community volunteers assist the teacher. Teachers can benefit from learning to interpret student errors. For example, maybe the student's knowledge of the first language is interfering or informing how they spell or pronounce a word. Teachers who are skilled at helping their students navigate multiple languages become so with ongoing support, so they develop and refine their knowledge, and eventually they'll be considered language experts in their community. This guide helps people address issues to provide more local language instruction. Yet we know L1 isn't always possible, so we include tips for L2 instruction. Developing the L2 should have intentional opportunities for students to speak and listen in a risk-free environment. Oral skills should be prioritized before there are print expectations. This way, the first time a child is asked to identify a word in print, it's more likely to be in their vocabulary. Teaching and learning materials are considered high quality if they offer specifics on how to use the L1 to assist with L2 learning. Support and instruction needs to be systematic instead of just random on-the-spot code switching. We've reached step 4. Program design will be challenging, and your ideal isn't everyone else's ideal. So of course, compromises are inevitable. Yet you should go into it knowing that the model might change or get refined in a few years. This will happen if there are ongoing respectful relations between everyone interested in child outcomes. To achieve this, examine results at the child and classroom level together. You'll learn what's working and what isn't. Also, advocacy should be part of the program from the start. Political leaders will often be in situations where they have to explain or defend the model. They need to know how to describe the features of it to others and what's expected in the short and the long term for outcomes. Help them. As mentioned, language is sensitive, and one way to have people understand the model is by disseminating the results in open discussions about what's working and what might need tweaking. The 4 steps in the Practical Language Choices Guide are setting the stage for children and the context to experience success in the primary years and beyond. I hope you find the guide useful in your efforts. Thank you.